It's been a big week in politics, so let's duke it out. Some of the moments that you may have missed this week in our Friday night fights. In the blue corner tonight, former New York State Senator David Carlucci. And in the red corner, managing editor of the Daily Signal, Tyler O'Neill. So let's talk about Susie Wiles, gentlemen. She's been named Trump's chief of staff. Let's get your thoughts on that. We'll start with you, Tyler.
Yeah, so Susie Wiles has a long track record in Florida politics in particular, but also she was the large force behind Trump's 2024 comeback, this amazing comeback story that we've seen where, you know, the former president indicted multiple times, shot at, bleeding, goes from, you know, being almost, you know, in disgrace in a lot of corners in 2021 to being reelected president of the United States this week after that amazing shot after the assassination attempt. And then, of course, going to McDonald's and donning that vest of the trash worker. There's not been a story like it, and Susie Wiles is largely responsible for this win.
David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's great to see. Now we have the first female chief of staff in the White House. What will be very interesting is we know her history. Donald Trump obviously has great respect for her. And it will be interesting, as we know, Donald Trump had many different chiefs of staff. John Kelly, four-star general, who obviously came out against Donald Trump during the campaign, was his longest-serving chief of staff. So it'll be really interesting to see the turnover that Donald Trump has or doesn't have in this next administration. So I expect Susie will be a little different than previous chiefs of staffs, right, coming right off the campaign. But it'll be interesting to see how she tries to keep some discipline to Donald Trump in the White House.
All right, gentlemen, Democratic states are already bracing for that Trump presidency. California Governor Gavin Newsom has convened a special session to try and safeguard the state's liberal policies before Trump takes office. What do you think it is that they're most worried about Donald Trump doing? David, you start.
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of things in terms of just abortion rights. That's something that's very concerning to people. But there's a long list. I think what you see here is Gavin Newsom taking this opportunity to really be in the forefront of this opposition, if you will, to Donald Trump. But I'm hopeful that Donald Trump sends this message about inclusiveness, about not being a threat to some of the civil liberties that people have across the country. So I'm not exactly sure what's on the agenda in California, but I have heard about this special session and the idea of certain bills being to codify California law to prevent about some of the things that Donald Trump has said that he will do. Particularly on mass deportation, if there's things that they can do to make sure that that's not carried out of control and really ripping families apart, I think they're going to try to do what they can to prevent that. And I hope it's successful, that they have something in place that goes after these high priority of people that shouldn't be in the country, but make sure that people that have been living here, raising a family, that there is a place for them here in the United States.
Tyler, what do you think? Do you think that these sanctuary states should be worried?
Yes, I think to some degree they should. The interesting thing, and when you talk about the immigration and the mass deportation issue, I believe President Trump is going to prioritize illegal aliens who have committed violent crimes in the United States first. And if Gavin Newsom wants to sign himself up and for protecting illegal aliens who have been going after Americans and victimizing Americans, he can be my guest. I think also he's going to probably fight on the gender issue. And what we've seen is the state of California become this sanctuary state for horrible transgender treatments that leave kids stunted, scarred, and infertile, and really threaten parental rights. And so I think there's going to be a very interesting battle there. On that issue in particular, President Trump is going to go after gender ideology, and he's going to stand for parental rights. And I think at some point, there is going to be a battle between these two leaders.
Yeah. You know, there's been a lot of this blame game back and forth since Kamala Harris lost. Democrats are really trying to figure out What went wrong with their message? In fact, Democratic Representative Seth Moulton from Massachusetts weighed in saying this, quote, Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges that many Americans face. I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. David, is he wrong?
No, I don't think he's wrong. And I think this is the soul searching that Democrats are doing to say, hey, what happened here? And I think it's the bottom line here is that when there's so many pressing issues, right, people struggling to make ends meet, and they hear our leaders talking about these issues, almost prioritizing them over the bread and butter issues that most Americans are dealing with, I think that frustrates voters. And I think Democrats particularly want to be the protector of people's expression of who they are and who they want to be. And I think it's gone overboard in that way that this PC police, if you will, that you're afraid to talk because you might say something that'll offend people. I think the congressman is right. And I think we have to come back to that reality of yes, these are issues and problems, but we have to tackle them in the right way, or else it blows up in our face and we ruin the progress that we've made. So I think you're going to see a lot of that talking about, okay, what is to blame for this election? And I don't think anybody can pinpoint any one singular thing. But I think the congressman is onto something there about what are the priorities of the Democratic Party. And I think we all admit these are important issues, but should they galvanize the conversations in the White House, in state legislatures? And I think the American people say no, it shouldn't.
So Kamala Harris, she secured a ton of celebrity support during her campaign. We had Taylor Swift, Beyonce, George Clooney. I mean, the list goes on and on. Tyler, why do you think it really didn't work out for her?
Yeah, I think there's a massive worldview divide between most Americans and the elites in this country. And oftentimes the elites think that they're right on everything. And I think this is one of the reasons why the transgender sports issue really was a key issue in this election, was because people know, we can see if somebody's male and they're competing against women, they have an unfair advantage. And if that person wants to identify as female, that doesn't change the fact that they're biologically male. And yet the elites have this notion that their ideology should override all the other American concerns. And so when it comes to each of these celebrities, they're talking in their own bubble, and they're very good about talking to their fellow elites, but they're not good about reaching out to Americans and really listening to what Americans have to say. And so busting this bubble is one of the big things that Trump did on Tuesday.
So here's kind of maybe a funny moment from Election Day. Google searches for "Did Joe Biden drop out?" spiked. It seems that some Americans didn't even know who was running. David, how did they miss that?
Well, I think what's happening is with the onslaught of political ads and 24-hour, news networks, I think people are just tuning it out. And they don't like the divisiveness. They don't like the name calling and this is that and what are the facts. And they just tune it out. If it's on the radio, they'll change the station. If it's on the TV, they'll flip to a new channel. And I think that's the reality that we're living in, right? That it is the same with this celebrity endorsement issue, that the American voter is sophisticated in terms of those that are dialed in. And a celebrity is not going to change their opinion. And I think that's what Democrats and Republicans were hoping for in getting these celebrity endorsements, that it would somehow tune in the people that have just tuned out. And I think that's showing that that just is not the case, is not true. But yes, it's getting harder and harder how you reach people that are just saying enough. They've had it. They don't want to engage in this political conversation, find it divisive. Whenever they have a conversation with a friend or a loved one, they find they're leaving the conversation angry, mad, upset. And that's something that I hope we can change. But it all starts with us to say, hey, we can have a conversation. We can have a vicious debate, if you will, but we've got to attack the policy, not the person. And in this day and age, it's just too easy to attack someone's character, right, and not the content of what they're talking about.
Yep, and we saw it on both sides. David Carlucci, Tyler O'Neill.